Hello everyone and welcome to this virtual roundtable. I'm delighted you've joined us today for this interactive webinar. I'm going to be introducing the participants shortly, but first, my name is Aidan Mercer and I'm the Marketing Director at buildingSMART International. Firstly, we do have two BSIs here today, so I'll just clarify, we'll call buildingSMART International buildingSMART and the British Standards Institute BSI just for future reference. And today I'm going to be your moderator, and we do aim to make this session as interactive as possible. Therefore, I do encourage attendees to submit questions using the comments section located within your window. Again, today's session is scheduled to last 60 minutes, and I will aim to save time for Q&A at the end, so please do use that function if possible. I'd also like to bring to your attention, I can just advance the slide. I would like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please do take note of this antitrust code of conduct, and you can scan it on the screen. Well, I'd like to introduce our participants today. First up is Daniel Forsman, is the Head of Process and Digitalization for Infrastructure Projects at DB Netz, which is Germany's rail network provider. Between 2016 and 2018, he was the lead of the infrastructure financing negotiation team. Between 2013 and 2016, he was Head of Corporate Infrastructure Strategy for Stations and Infrastructure Construction at DB AG. Between 2008 and 2012, he was Head of Corporate Development at Berlin Airports, and between 2001 and 2008, he was Strategy Consultant and Engagement Manager at McKinsey. He studied Economics and Business Administration and graduated in Munster and Hamburg and lives in Berlin. Next up is Dr. Jan Tulke. He's the Managing Director at Plan Bauen 4.0. The goal of Plan Bauen is to accelerate the standardization and market implementation of BIM. Previously, Jan was Head of Research and Product Development at Hochtief and is a lecturer at the Ruhr University in Bochum for Building Information Modeling, and is an active member at various committees at DIN, CEN, ISO and VDI for the standardization of BIM. Next up is Fiona Queck, who is key personnel at Siemens Real Estate, handling the strategic BIM topics in Germany and also worldwide. Her role as a global BIM expert includes establishing and continuously reviewing BIM standards and its governance, while advising on specific BIM projects and ensuring BIM implementation. In her 16 years of international professional experience, she has been involved in managing a variety of major projects in different project life cycles, including master planning, mixed-use developments, corporate, commercial, hotel, and healthcare projects. Next up, we have Rahul Shah, who's the Sector Development Director for the Built Environment at the British Standards Institute, BSI, and he's worked with asset owners, main contractors, architects, engineers, and manufacturers for over 23 years in various roles, driving the digital transformation, innovation, and leading on BIM strategy and implementation for programs globally. And finally, we have Frank Weiss, who is a Senior Director responsible for strategy, new products, BIM innovation at Oracle Construction and Engineering. Before joining Oracle Construction Engineering in 2018, he was the co-founder of Conject, a company for project collaboration in construction founded in Munich in 2000. While at Conject, he opened numerous international offices, but has always remained faithful to his passion of product management. As an experienced entrepreneur, he's known for his focus in IT software as a service for the construction industry. Frank is a tech evangelist, thought leader, and presenter at national and international high-tech industry events, and he represents Oracle as a strategic advisory council member at buildingSMART International, and has launched several standardization initiatives such as the DIN Spec 91391, Open Cde APIs, and currently focuses on Cde Is, digital twins, smart cities, GIS integration, and others. So with that introduction, we obviously have some expert panelists here today. I do have a variety of questions, but we are going to be talking a lot about standardization and CDEs. And I thought before we got started, I would like to just define what a CDE is. It's quite a hotly debated topic. And I got this from the BIM Wiki as a good way of, a very short and succinct way of defining a CDE. So a common data environment is a single source of truth, single source of information used to collect, manage, and disseminate documentation, the graphical model and non-graphical data for the whole project team. So With that, and with the title, Standards and Certification, will they increase the maturity in projects? And can they be a game changer in BIM? I would like to start by asking about the role of standards within this context. So are they relevant in 2022 and beyond? And maybe I'll ask that firstly to Fiona. Are standards relevant in 2022 and beyond?
Well, yes, definitely. At the project level, Siemens Real Estate is responsible for all real estate related activities of Siemens AG. So we create value and manage Siemens Real Estate portfolio all across Europe and also globally. Therefore, the guidelines and standardization which cater internationally and nationally are perfect for us. Of course, we still need to adjust them slightly according to regional practice and regulation accordingly. With the amount of projects we have, we can align expectations, provide general framework to manage all projects, and have a unified approach for consistency purposes.
Fantastic. Daniel, also here as a client, so are they relevant in 2022 and beyond?
Absolutely. Even more beyond than today, I would say, because right now we are in the middle of the BIM implementation and adding hundreds of projects every year, which are going to work with BIM. So it's very important that we have all our providers on board, that we speak the same language as our providers, and especially if we recruit new colleagues or work with other people together, that we can talk about the same things and have a common set of knowledge and a common set of understanding. So it's a topic that's predicted to grow over the next 3 years quite fast.
Yeah, I think we've seen engagement in standards, and the role of standards is something that's growing at the buildingSMART. Frank, do you see that from your point of view, that standards are becoming an area for growth in the community and acknowledgement and acceptance that that's the way forward?
Well, what we observe at the moment, globally speaking, is that a market which is moving into a new space or a new era needs to have certainty, because the participants, they don't know, they need to orient themselves. They need to understand, is BIM just a fashion and it will go away? Or is it undoubtedly something where we are committed to for years? So there are like 3 steps to consider. First of all, you have to have standards to agree on something, how to communicate. Second is that then vendors, and I mean all vendors, either engineers, construction companies, software vendors, have to start saying, we are applying those standards. And then, of course, that might be a topic for later. It's then about that this is going to be certified, which again is another level of certainty for everybody who is pursuing these approaches and buying services in this regard.
Yeah, I like the topic of certainty. So Rahul, so why does the industry need certainty?
Well, I'll come back to industry, in a minute, but we in general as humans, we need certainty in our life, right? Whether in personal lives or at work, right? And certainty gives us that confidence. If you look at the construction projects, so to speak, and if we don't have certainty about the delivery, about the timeline, about the cost, about the quality, then the impacts are huge. Not only commercially on asset owners, but also us as citizens, and general society, in terms of our livelihoods, in terms of our quality of life and so forth. So I think certainty in life in general is absolutely must to have, whatever we are striving to achieve. Now, in the context of BIM, Cde, and digitizations, certainty is very paramount, because it's relatively newest concept, right, for many people around the world, in terms of implementing these new age technologies and workflows and processes. Combine that with newly introduced the ISO 19650 suite of standards in the last couple of years, right? So people are looking for some kind of guidance, certainty in terms of when they implement BIM, is it going to deliver the outcomes that they are aspiring to achieve, right, by implementing BIM? It's not just a fashion, as Frank said. It's about achieving ultimately, your strategic objectives in terms of cost certainty, time certainty, quality certainty, and also, reducing that sustainability sort of, angle as well, in terms of the carbon reduction and so forth. So certainty is very important, in my opinion. Aidan.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rahul. And Jan, so we talk about the role of standards and certainty, and you mentioned, or I mentioned in your introduction about market implementation. How do you see that mix between the relevance, certainty, and then the adoption in the market? How are you bridging that part, and do you see that as something mature yet for your market?
Yeah, I think here the certification comes into place, and that gives orientation, that helps users to find products, to find services which comply to these standards, and that makes it much easier to select these partners, these tools, and really implement these standards in your daily business. And at the end, it really also saves time and money, because you don't have to go through a specific coordination and configuration, or even customizing for your specific project. So it makes much easier to apply these new standards to your daily work.
Yeah. And just reminded about some of this interaction with the audience, actually, that we've just posted some poll in the chat. It certainly gives us a good indicator on some of these topics, and one of those is really around standards and certification, and do they accelerate the digital transformation? So I wondered that as a question, Fiona. So do you believe that standards and certification are actually accelerators for the digital transformation?
Yeah. Actually, certification will create a level playing field in the real estate industry. If everyone adopts it, soon it will become a norm. Imagine if everyone is aware of this set of standards and also certification, there will be a common understanding and definition, components and basic principles, organizational improvement, and the gap in our current project delivery practices will be closed and facilitate digital transformation. So Siemens buildings are designed with global values in mind and a vision. We often are delighted to partner with chosen parties who are very competent and have credibility to be part of this BIM journey with us. So learning by doing is acceptable for us, but the fundamental competency and professionalism is expected. So in summary, certification will be a solid common base for our partners and us. So as Siemens, we can concentrate more in realizing our vision, driving innovation, digitalization, and sustainable solutions, and focus on long-term goals.
Yeah, and Frank, I'm reading some of the polling answers here. We have so far 100% agreement from the audience, which is interesting that standards do accelerate digital transformation. So a good start there. And what are your thoughts on the role of standards? And you work in some pretty nice technologies. I know that you've got applying a lot of nice technology to construction sites and things like that, and your Cde. So do you see then standards as that accelerator?
Yeah, I think there are two answers to it. The first answer, coming back to Oracle, is definitely that standards are very keen to us. It's a part of our DNA, either in databases or in other technologies. I'm really like horizontal speaking, irrespective of our industry. But if we consider our industry right now, I think we are at a tipping point. When speaking to different customers, what we learn is lighthouse projects with BIM are something what happens in different parts of the world. They send their best people, their most knowledgeable people. They even summon the best contractors, subcontractors, architects, and engineers, and somehow they can manage the project. But when speaking to those managing directors or responsibles now, what we hear is what we now need is the next level of rollout, of deployment. And that means we have to pave the way. This means standards have to become more and more the common language, because that would simplify onboarding, it would simplify contraction, it will simplify the use of tools, that everyone works with the best tool possible. So that's why we believe this is setting up a trend right now and the beginning of maybe a new era?
Yep, I totally agree. And interesting how then that moves into, level playing field. So Daniel, from your point of view, how important is it that you are approaching a project or the management of your assets knowing that there is a level playing field or opportunity for a level playing field for the community?
For us as a provider of infrastructure, we certainly need a level playing field, because we are legally required to give access to all kind of providers. So it's very important that we have a level playing field to make sure we get a certain quality in our providers and in the plannings and the modelings we receive. So a level playing field is a kind of minimum required standard, so that we can work with what to get delivered to us, and that we can connect between different providers. It's also very important, since we change providers during a long run of a project, and a level playing field makes sure that everyone can work with the products the one before him produced or sent to us.
Yeah, and Jan, I wonder if a level playing field is enabled by open data standards. So, how do things like a CDE, how would a CDE provide open level playing field for the community? How can access to BIM information in an open CDE provide that level playing field?
Yeah, I think what we are establishing is digital processes in our industry, and the CDE helps us to connect all the participants of a project and establish these digital processes and exchanging data and information. And therefore, it's important to understand, and the ISO 9650 gives a general principle to it. But then people are asking how they can really implement it, and are there tools which helps to implement these concepts? And the standard is not so specific about that, and that's why we created this DIN spec, where we translated it into a functionality of a platform, and try to get some supporting lists of features, and also describe how different modules in such a CDE can support this data sharing and collaboration. And that's also why we have two parts in this DIN spec, and one really gives criteria, what kind of functionality can be provided, and it's also about hosting and operation and data security in this data environment. And we also realized that at the end, you want to execute some business processes. And then we have building information modeling, which is one method helping to fulfill these business processes. And you use models for this, but part of this could be data sharing on a platform, on a common data environment. And therefore, we had a deeper look into these use cases, how a platform can help, and what are specific use cases for the CDE. That's all described in part one. But then it comes to connecting all these partners in the project. And that's why we think we also need an open standard for an interface and a programming interface. And that's part two of this DIN spec, where we describe the first concept on an open CDE API. And that's currently further developed together with different software companies from all over the world.
And how many of the software providers are involved in that? I mean, is it broad? Is it 80%? What's sort of 60%? What do you say? Do you need more people engaged, more companies, or do you feel like you have the breadth already?
I think Frank can say more to it maybe, but I think developing the first concept, we have a broad involvement, and now it's getting rolled out all over the industry, because also tools have to connect to it.
Yeah,
Frank,
Frank.
Yeah, if I may add one thought to it, when we built out the DIN spec part 2, which was a concept in a German-speaking context, right? we realized it doesn't make sense to work on the data standards, in all respect for the German community here. It has to be something globally and internationally. That's why we thought that has to be really also pursued by different software vendors. At the moment, this group works with about 10 different vendors around the world. If you ask me, is it enough? My answer is clearly no. We need more. We need more to really move towards that and recognize that there is a deep value also for them and their customers. But we also know by experience, some companies are, in all fairness, engaged in different standardization committees, and they cannot be first front at all. So some are also at the moment in the second row, waiting until the new standard is released in order just to adopt it into their software.
Interesting. Yeah, so I think we're just looking at some of the poll results. Can aligning your CDE implementation with international or regional standards help your business and your clients? And we have looking at 76% say yes, and 24% say I don't know, with no votes coming in as no. So clearly there's an alignment there that's very important. Rahul, I wanted to come over to you as a certification body. I'm aware that you have a kite mark for CDE. We're talking a bit about the Dean spec, but what about the kite mark? So what drove you at BSI to establish this kite mark for CDEs?
Well, exactly same reason as Fiona articulated as clients, asset owners. It's about establishing that level playing field. And this exercise started actually almost three years ago or so. When we already had a kite mark, BIM kite mark for processes specific kite marks. With the early versions of those BIM standards, PAS standards and BS standards, and we had many tier 1 contractors, design consultants, and so forth embracing it. And one of the challenges that the community was facing was that we all know that implementing BIM effectively requires the right processes, but also couple that with technology as well, right? And at the time, technology, it's a very crowded market. We all know that technology is a very crowded market, and the tier contractors, engineers, architects were struggling in terms of selecting, and having confidence on the right BIM technology platforms, right? So they then, started having those conversations with us and saying, is there anything that BSI could do in terms of helping us, identifying, the right sort of BIM platforms that can support us embedding international best practices, regional best practices in terms of standards. And this is how we started the journey in terms of developing that kite mark for BIM software. And then we engaged with, I think, 10 or so software vendors in terms of shaping the kite mark, ensuring that it incorporates not only the functionality part of BIM, but also security, the customer service part of it, the resilience part of it, and so forth as well. So kite mark incorporates all those elements in terms of how secure is the platform, how robust it is in terms of the development process, the software development process. And most importantly, one of my favorite elements of the kite mark is about, how do you take into account the client feedback in terms of the continuous improvement of your software as well. So that then, was discussed with the industry, including end users as well, tier 1 contractors, and, some of them. And it was well received by the industry. That is exactly what, the industry could benefit by. And we rolled it out last year around March or April.
So you have a sort of continuous improvement or update to that kite mark process with clients in having some input into that?
Yeah, correct. So the way kite mark works in general, it's about, it's an annual commitment to achieving excellence, right? So for example, if, not example, I mean, we all know that Oracle achieved, Aconex achieved the BIM software kite mark for, Aconex and CDE platform. Now that's their sort of, ongoing commitment to that excellence part, in all those 5-6 elements that I articulated: functionality, but security, how robust is software development process, behind the scene, as well as customer feedback, that how do they take into account the customer feedback and improve, the platform on an ongoing basis. Achieving kite mark is not a one-off exercise. Actually, it's just the beginning. of your ongoing commitment to maintaining that excellence and continuous improvement as well. And this is where continuous improvements is in two parts. One is, the software developers themselves identifying areas for improvement, continuously. And second is, having that constant, that mechanism of getting customer feedback and incorporating that into the platform as well.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, sort of question then for Siemens and for Daniel, Fiona. How much confidence does that provide you as a user of a CDE that there are organizations that are getting the kite mark, but also asking for your input as a sort of recurring process to make sure that the CDE is at the right level that you require for that playing field?
Do I go first?
Of course, Fiona.
So for Siemens Real Estate, I'll take on private sector and also real estate development. So the mentioned documents are very relevant. We rather not reinvent the wheel, and also when there are guidelines and standards out there that is already well established and regulated, we will adopt them. So ultimately, we are using these sets of best practice that is implementable and applicable for our projects. At the same time, we are constantly reviewing and upgrading our BIM-based document as well. It's also high time since 2016, so targeting every 3 to 5 years review internally is a good timing. In fact, SRE has developed systemized and standardized BIM-based documents, which reflect ISO, OpenBIM, and DIN, and this is to ensure consistent application of standards, which will entail efficient planning and construction timeframe, feasible for project economic, high technical, and design quality of the building asset.
Daniel?
Yeah, for us, it certainly adds confidence. It's certain, but we have to consider that in the infrastructure industry, we are not quite as far developed with BIM as, for example, in the building sector. So we still have a long journey ahead of us with where the standards are not yet so settled and so widely used. So it's very necessary to update them regularly and to work on them and to improve them and to make them practical, especially to foster a broad acceptance. So the certification process and the kite mark is one thing, but the other thing is it's very important to invest in the continuous development and improvement and at the practicability of the requirements. That's for us the most important part right now.
I think at buildingSMART, with infrastructures are sort of, let's say, fastest growing area of development of standards and services. Fortunately, one thing we're seeing is though that the infrastructure room and the railway room are very keen to learn from each other and from other rooms. So that's what we describe as our groups, and the building room contributing. So it does feel that the processes of BIM and the lessons learned are being applied to the development and uptake of infrastructure domains, extensions, and things like that, which is really good. I wondered, Jan, around this DIN spec. So how do you think in general that's impacted the local level, and how much of an impact do you think that's had on the international level, and maybe even compared to ISO 19650? How do you think transitioning those things into international standards has an impact, and what do you see as the impact?
Yeah, I think it started as a national initiative, but since from the beginning it was designed to being recognized internationally. That's why we also published it since from the beginning in English language. And I think it was recognized very well because it really helps to drill down these general concepts of the ISO down to software functionalities and how to implement standards really in tools, and not just having them on written paper. Yeah, that actually was also the reason for creating this DIN spec. And yeah, one aim was that it should be very practical, it should help clients and contractors to really select tools and distinguish the different capabilities and functionalities, and educate the market what functionalities could help to implement digital methods.
Frank, do you agree with that this is helping the clients to adopt those digital methods?
Well, I think it is really filling a gap. If we read the ISO 19650, this gives a great overall understanding what a common data environment shall do. But it's very general. It's very general speaking. And the problem, what we identified, and Jan, you remember when we discussed it 4 to 5 years ago, it was if a public or a private client needs to order a common data environment platform, what are the criteria? What shall they really purchase? What is that? So that was one of really the aims, to make that specific. And that also shows that there is at the moment in the market 2 discussions going on. One of a broad common data environment of applications, but there is a strong demand in the market for clients to purchase a common data environment platform. So for this type of single source of truth, there must be an answer. And, without ignoring that maybe there will be a time in the future, in the next decade or in the next 20 years, when all of these data between applications can just free flow, there must be a connector between these platforms. And this is exactly what has been identified and started with DINSPEC Part 2, which is now Open CDE Document API, the connection between those platforms that helps users on one hand to pursue a strong platform, single source of truth, high visibility, high security, and so forth. And at the flip side, to be able to exchange the data with authoring tools, validation tools, and potentially other common data environments. Because we should not forget, in the market, we still discuss design construction common data environments and asset common data environments, where there will be also always a big rift, and we need to use data drops to exchange that data.
Yeah, Rahul, I mean, I'm just interested in your thoughts on this. So Frank's talked about that sort of CDE, let's say, is often used for design and coordination, and then there's the sort of asset lifecycle focus, which, is that a separate CDE? In your mind, you've talked about kite marking and security. We also hear about open CDE. Is there a sort of industry mindset that's, let's say, focused too much on specific tasks at certain phases, and that we actually need to make sure that across the board we have this level playing field of platform approach for whatever phase of the life cycle you're in?
Ideally, Aidan, yes, I think that's what we should be aiming for. But the reality is different, and the reality is largely governed by the procurement contracts and regionally, from where I see it, right? From where I see it, and working in the industry for a number of years, largely in the UK, and the way procurement contracts are structured, that governs in terms of, how people even behave, or companies behave, right? Collaboratively or anti-collaboratively, or what have you, right? But like it or not, but I think the contracts, have a lot to do in terms of fostering that collaborative culture, in terms of, establishing that platform for people to exchange, share, and use data right from design, procurement, construction, sort of commissioning, handover, and all the way into operations and the whole life cycle, right? And that's what we are aiming for, slowly, but I think that's where we are going. If we go back in time 10 years, 15 years ago, where we didn't have BIM, where we didn't have conversations about CDE or no standards, no nothing, imagine, the designs, the constructions, and everything is done, sometimes 2D drawings and paper drawings and spreadsheets and what have you. I think we've moved a long way from that. Now we're talking about at least design and construction, CDE, and operation as 2 phases at the moment, right? But I think we are heading in the directions where once the industry shifts more genuinely towards data-driven industry and not document plus data at the moment, which is hybrid that we are living in, then I think we should see that shift happening maybe in 10, 15 years time. But we're not there yet. Definitely moving in that direction.
That's a really interesting point. But you talk about, in the UK, this is how it's done. I kind of want to come back to regional differences here and how that doesn't help the discussion. But Fiona, does Siemens look at it from two ways? Do you look at it as sort of a CDE for a different phase of the life cycle, or do you look at it as a single source of truth with an opportunity to manage the entirety of a building, let's say?
For us, CDE is like the common data environment where it's a platform, it's a single source of truth. And it's almost like data managing, and it's like an oracle there that you sort of deposit the data or exchange data, and CDE knows no geographical boundary. So we are so well connected nowadays with internet. So it is a plus point.
Yeah. And Jan, I was really interested in Rahul talking about those regional challenges that you have, let's say, in contracts. And you've done a lot of work, I know, with SEN and European consideration, but also, German national market. Do you see that as a problem that, these national inputs that don't necessarily help on a broader scale?
I think these differences are much more in the details of the data, and on that level where we are talking here, it's exchanging data containers and connecting tools, and that's everywhere the same internationally. And I think it's as we heard, connecting design tools, but in future there will be sensors, there will be drones, there will be robots, and all they need data and they write data, and they have to be plugged into our project system. And that's a common data environment. And to be possible to do that, we need a common language, we need a common interface to transmit this data. And basically these are data containers, but then these containers inside could be specific to use cases, to a certain application, and there maybe national differences come into place. But that's the next step. First is really to pave the way and create a digital infrastructure to exchange this data.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I'm conscious that we're quite a long way through, and I sort of still really in this area. But I just one more sort of question on this topic really for Daniel was about reacting to that. So how do you react to getting the right CDE for that part of the project, and how do you also consider things like digital twins and sensors and other inputs that you have on your infrastructure, in Germany?
For us with DB, the CDE is the platform we use only during the infrastructure project right now, starting with what we are going to do and ending when the project is finished, and we do the management of the assets afterwards in a different platform. It is due to certain levels of development we have right now in the asset management. We think differently about infrastructure. We are more like sorting things out. We have, for example, all the elevators or the tracks and so on. And then in the project, we put it all together and look at it on a project perspective. And that's not as easy a break as you can manage right now in our current situation. And by the way, we are much more developed with BIM, using it during our projects and in our asset management. So going forward, we are aiming to develop a digital twin also in our asset management. We want to use it, and we try to add all the data we have right now. But it's still a long way to go. Also during the age of our infrastructure, we are looking back to nearly 200 years of infrastructure with quite a diverse sort of data. So that will need a couple of years to put it together in one database and really make it to a digital twin here and to a virtual reality in the following.
Certainly sounds like great opportunities for those departments to learn from one another. And
Always.
And Frank, what are your thoughts on hearing that?
Yeah, I think there are like three things popping up in my mind. Number one, I think we are not benefiting enough what already exists in IFC. If we look at the IFC structure, and the reason why I'm saying is because we investigate lots of the ontology in it about what is available in terms of geolocation, in terms of processes, in terms of material information, in terms of time, and so forth. So why do I'm saying it? Because I think everybody on the call knows it. It's about 4D integration, 5D integration, 6D integration, ND integration of elements to really use that. That's number one. Number two, in the background, you see the Innovation Lab from Chicago. We also work with startups on really leveraging those technologies, which is partly sensor-based. For instance, like a company based out of here in Berlin named Conquer, which makes concrete smart, where they use specific devices to measure the specific grade of the concrete when it's going to be delivered by the general contractor, and then use these as beacons in the building for indoor mapping purposes, which is just one example of IoT. But we have an own IoT unit, which is really pursuing that and wants to offer that as a service. And we at the moment investigating together with clients, but also with the standard committees like Dean, BSI, and you guys at buildingSMART. And how can we really create value for the customers? So not being driven just by, just attractive tech. No, what are the first use cases which bring the value either in the old triangle, means quality, time, and cost, or the new currency, which all relies to sustainability, a topic which is now all upon us, globally speaking, and we need to consider that coming from governments to our industry, to clients, and then ultimately to contractors and subcontractors.
Yeah, I mean, the topic of sustainability, you probably should have another roundtable on it, but really take your point there that it's front and center. And I don't want to pick on you again, Frank, but as we sort of consider this, you talked about IFC and buildingSMART. Why was buildingSMART chosen as the home for this open CDE project, very, very briefly? And kind of what's the status today?
Yeah, well, first of all, when we did the aftermath of DeanSpec, we discussed what would be a possible home. And honestly speaking, buildingSMART has been one of the options. We could have run it as an industry consortium, but we thought, why not using an established, high qualified community, which is buildingSMART, and where standardization is a part of their DNA. So that's why we brought it to them and introduced the concept in Düsseldorf in March 2019. Worked with several companies now for a couple of months. And I'm happy to even say today that we are about to start the customer engagement program in February 15th with about 10 customers now to really see on how that flow works between common data environments and validation tools and authoring tools. So we believe that this is one great step forward and a prerequisite to talk about these attractive things about data management, having all of that really in the cloud available, starting to do any type of analytics, using machine learning and AI components, then of course in relation to IoT devices and or assets, where are they located in the model, but also in the cyber physical space, which then ultimately, Daniel, leads to what you said before about the digital twin.
Yeah, Frank, I was there almost 3 years ago, and quite a lot's changed. Not a lot's changed. It was a roundtable. It was a physical roundtable, and we do hope to be able to do those soon. But we're doing our best right now. So, Fiona, I sort of wondered how. I know the Siemens have a lot of focus on things like the digital twins, and certainly applied to buildings and real estate. I know you're quite at the forefront of a lot of that. So, how do you approach topics such as digital twin and sustainability? Just very briefly.
Yeah, so well, for Siemens Real Estate alone, as corporate real estate client, it doesn't stop just at planning and design construction phase. So we also need to take care of our external customer and internal customer needs as well. So for example, our operation team, asset management, our hardware division, which is Siemens Smart Infrastructure, or our software division, which is digital in industry software. So Siemens Technology, Siemens Mobility, just to name a few. So we work together with our customers and partners to create an ecosystem which both intuitively responds to the need of the people and support our partners to achieve their business goal. So hence, data quality for us is very, very important. It wasn't carried out properly from the start. We will encounter some issues and challenges later on with our customers and also stakeholders. So in our Siemens new building, Siemens Building Technology headquarters in Zug, which is Switzerland, which is one of our BIM early adopter projects. So our main customer is Siemens Smart Infrastructure, who is offering numerous products in which buildings can be digitally controlled and operated. Example, building automation and smart building technology. So the digital twin is a basic requirement for such kind of project. We are convinced that future of ecological and economical building operation lies in the data collected by countless sensors and integrated in the digital twin. So we are currently testing how we can use this data even more efficiently in future with intelligent Internet of Things data tools such as Siemens MindSphere.
Thank you very much. And I was wondering, Rahul, how do we approach the topic of, everything that Fiona said, how do we approach the topic of certifying and providing the right training to support all of this massive influx of technologies and opportunities that we have around digital twins and sensors and everything?
Well, we have to start gradual. It has to be an incremental approach because, as Daniel said, large, for example, if I take just one client, Deutsche Bahn, and the large infra clients, the amount of assets and, what have you, turning them into digital assets, over the years, right? So in terms of then embedding that best practice, you got to look at, who are the stakeholders involved in enabling the digital twin vision and aspirations, right? And start, identifying their interface with their processes and start educating them, right? So I think there is that people element to that as well, because we have technology, we have some standards at the moment enabling digital twin, and we have, some for BIM and Cde. But I think what we really need is qualified, and I think Fiona already alluded this early on in the conversation, is about having the competent people, the skilled people driving these processes, driving these technologies that are aligned with international best practices, call it standard or not. But, so we got processes established aligned with international best practice. We got technologies now started to align with international best practices. So it's now about time to, also start educating, the broader mass about the processes, the technologies, and the international best practices. So I think the focus needs to be on people, education, training as well. And I know at BSI, British Standards Institution, as well as BSI, buildingSMART, we all support the industry in terms of their upskilling education through various training and education programs as well. So I think not only training or technology training programs, but also look at the standards training programs, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have, I'm just looking at the comments chat. I apologize that there's a lot of questions. We're not going to get to them all. I'll try and select a few. But before I do, Jan, I had a question on the outlook whilst I look at some of the questions here. If we look 5-10 years ahead, what does the future of standardization certification look like, do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the next steps is really that standards are not only written in paper and made for humans, but they are machine consumable. And for example, if we think about BIM execution plans, for example, they are written in text nowadays. but in future it could be like a workflow program which you can plug into your CDE, and all these access rights and data contribution flow and so on will be configured automatically. So I think this will be the future, that we write standards also for the machines and not only for ourselves.
Yeah. And Daniel, what do you think the future of certification and standards will look like in 5 to 10 years?
I could not agree more with Jan, because we certainly are looking into how we can not only educate people with standards and set a certain level in the industry, but also how can we digitalize them and how can we use them in our processes, because since we do have a huge challenge to get more productive, it's absolutely necessary to have a common standard which we can also use to machine learning and to automation processes, especially in the building industry. So yeah, complete agreement here.
Frank?
Yeah, I think I take this already like as clear confirmations towards more digitization. And I think machine-to-machine communication is the holy word in this. And this is like Jan said about the EIR and the BIM execution plan, that this is going to be translated into algorithms that you can really check that when this data enters a common data environment. So that these things are already like pre-qualified, back to your point, Fiona, when it's about data quality, that you have like a pre-quality assurance in the first place. And this also will help us to leverage technology much better, in a sense that it's not just paper written, that it's going to be something what we can practically use. That's something what we as an industry potentially can pursue better. So that this is not like a two-part process, that we do it more like from an agile development orientation and figuring out how, and driven by how can we create value faster. And my last point is really how can we benefit in tying those data streams together in a way that we create meaning, again, outcome and value for the different stakeholders, because we should not forget there is not one ultimate winner of all of this data. We have different stakeholders who are pursuing different interests according to their contracts. So we have to be smart and working together with the standardization bodies, with the clients, with the subbies, the GCs, the architect, to really understand those interest groups and to provide these value properly.
I think as well, the industry business models around what the data will analyze and provide. So whether it's around the topic of sustainability and how you measure certain things, that might be, you know, what drives some of the change in the future. Fiona, I'm just, apologies, we're running very quickly out of time. I did have a question from the audience directly for you, and it was around the use of standards generated by BIM projects after all the existing systems such as SAP. And is this data used from BIM projects in the lifecycle phase for BIM data, and is that now the master?
I don't quite understand the question.
Do standards help to use the data generated by BIM projects afterwards in the existing SAP and asset management system, or is the BIM now the master data?
It is quite how to say, robust, where it is the BIM model now is the model, or the single source of truth sort of model that we use for different stakeholders BIM use cases. So not really only on the SAP. So SAP is or data management or FM management system is part of one of the stakeholders of the BIM model. So yeah, if I answer it correctly.
Yep, I think that's
okay.
Good. There was a question here around accelerating certification, software certification. So, you know, I think that's a very valid point. What I would say, tune into the buildingSMART International Virtual Summit. We're planning to talk a bit more about the acceleration of software certification. We're aligning that to the technical roadmap as how we accelerate certification and make sure we support that. I guess, Jan, I see we're welcome back. apologies, there's lots of questions around and comments about ISO 19650. I guess really as we start to wrap up, maybe we could share some of the poll results. But Rahul, any sort of closing remarks on the topic and what you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, just a quick one. I couldn't agree more with Jan's comments on what's the future of standards and certification, right? So it's machine readable standards is where we're heading towards. And when we say certification today, certification is it's a point in time, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, and that audit process and certification. I think where we would see in future is data driven, sort of real time, certification or assurance, real time based on data. So it's not, that interface, that 6 months or 12 month certification process. Instead, it's an ongoing process. So if we take an example of, say, carbon, for example, and measuring operational carbon, having digital twin, measuring, real time operational carbon, align that with machine readable standard is where the future is. Yeah.
Thanks. And Jan, just your final sort of wrap-up thoughts as we share the results of the polls?
Yeah, I think what is also very important is to think about or think in use cases, because if we get these more clearly defined, the use cases of building information modeling in the different project phases and which project partner want to achieve what and who have to contribute to that, that helps us very much to identify the different data pieces and how they should be processed and distributed between all the participants. So it's really important to get these use cases more clearly defined, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that topic of use cases. We're utilizing that as much as we can to try to generate new work as well. So Daniel, any closing thoughts as we wrap up shortly?
Okay. No, I think everything is set for my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Frank, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think the opportunity, if we work more use case based, is definitely not only to have the afterthought and aftermath process, that we can enter really the paradigm of predictions, so that we can tie together those data streams and learn on what specific task in a project may imply to the schedule. So these are elements where we work together with clients and startups to identify that further down the road on how can we create meaning. And again, back to your point of Fiona, what is also the quality of the data we find there, right, in the first place, but then to really get some good suggestions and impulses to the decision makers on how to behave to make the project more successful, by also then considering sustainability goals in the future, which is the next in the roundtable. These are the things which drives us a lot. And my final word is we are very delighted and honored to work very trustfully together with our clients, but also with the standardization bodies, because we believe we need everyone in the industry to make this big shift and change happening. So we need the subbies, the architects, the engineers, the contractors, the clients, standardization bodies, the regulators, and also ultimately the tech companies to make the life easier for everyone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think working together is absolutely the way forward, and I'm very keen to push that message, certainly. So, and we've definitely agreed the next roundtable topic. So thanks for that, Frank. And Fiona, finally from you, any thoughts and final comments?
Oh my God, 2 minutes. So, like the saying, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? So, for me, it's that like an example. 10 years ago, we planned and built our new Siemens headquarters in Munich using conventional methods. Today, just 10 years later, we are planning entire Cde district, the new Siemens Starts project in Berlin. It is a total digital transformation and adopting standardized BIM from day one. So this is now standard for us at Siemens. So within 10 years frame, you can see there's this huge difference. So yeah, we are really excited for the next, for our future as well. So
Well, it sounds like Standards has accelerated the digital transformation at Siemens. So back to that initial point, this is exciting times, and actually collaboration and standardization, certification, kite marking is all very important to provide that certainty that we all require in our industry. And certainty is certainly something that we all strive for. So thank you all very much. I think we're out of time. So any final comments before I wrap up?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Fiona, Frank, Daniel, Jan, and Rahul. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks to the audience for your active participation and a very interesting chat, and for your answers. We shared some of the poll results. I think that was interesting as well for everybody to see, and we'll send a follow-up to this session. But I'd like to thank our panelists today and our audience. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Aidan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.